Welcome back, crime junkies. Get ready, because today we're going deep, deep into a case that's shaking the music world.
Yeah, the accusations against Sean Diddy Combs.
You know him, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, just plain Diddy, the music mogul, the entrepreneur, the alleged abuser.
It's complicated.
Seriously complicated. Lawsuits, accusations, and a who's who of the music biz. We're going to try and break it all down for you today.
Look at all the players, all the accusations.
But first, a huge trigger warning for everyone.
This one is rough. We're going to be talking about sexual assault, physical violence, even drug use.
If any of that is going to be a problem for you, please skip this episode. Seriously.
But if you're staying with us, buckle up.
This one is wild.
It's a wild one.
Okay, let's set the scene. Everyone knows Diddy, right? The guy's a hip-hop icon.
Entrepreneur seems to reinvent himself every other year.
But now he's facing a whole new kind of spotlight. Diddy's actually in jail right now.
Awaiting trial. Federal charges. Sex trafficking and racketeering.
He's pleaded not guilty, of course.
But on top of that,
on top of that, there are 18, count them, 18 civil lawsuits.
allegations of assault, rape, the list goes on.
And a lot of these lawsuits,
They share a theme.
They sure do. They say Diddy used his power, his influence, to silence these women.
And that's when this whole thing starts to get really, really dark.
Really dark. So let's talk about some of these women, these accusers.
Yeah.
First up, Cassie Ventura. You know her, right? Big-time R&B singer.
She was with Diddy for a long time, romantically and professionally, over a decade.
And her lawsuit, it was filed back in 2023. It alleges years of abuse.
Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and some of the details,
they're tough to hear. Like her claims about being forced into basically sex work while Diddy filmed.
He even had this term for it, these encounters. He called them freak-offs.
I know. It's chilling. And Ventura's lawsuit, it talks about alleged beatings.
Coercion, drugs.
She even claims that a lot of these incidents, other people saw them. Diddy's staff, his employees.
Which makes you think, was there a culture of silence around this guy? A culture of fear?
Ventura ended up settling with Diddy out of court, but her speaking out is huge.
Huge. And it kind of opened the floodgates. Other women started sharing their stories.
Absolutely. Another one of those women, Joy Dickerson-Neal. Back in 91, she was a student.
Psychology student at Syracuse.
And she was in one of Diddy's music videos. So according to her lawsuit, she went out on this date with Diddy.
And things went very, very wrong.
Turned into a nightmare. She says he drugged her, sexually harassed her, abused her, and then, this is almost unbelievable, he distributed revenge porn.
Unbelievable. Dickerson-Neal says she was at a recording studio when she realized, wait, something's wrong.
She'd been drugged.
Right, and that's when he took her to another location and assaulted her.
She later found out from a male friend that Diddy had shown him a recording of the assault. Can you even imagine?
The trauma. I can't.
And then there's Liza Gardner. Her story is even more disturbing, honestly. She claims that in 1990, she was still a minor. And she was raped by Diddy. And Aaron Hall, the R&B singer, was there too.
And it gets worse. Days after this alleged rape, she says Diddy assaulted her, choked her until she passed out.
Unconscious. Now, jump forward to 2023. We meet Rodney Lil Rod Jones. He's a producer. Worked with Diddy on his album, The Love Album, Off the Grid.
His lawsuit alleges that Diddy repeatedly groped him, pressured him to solicit sex workers.
Made him take illegal drugs.
And it gets really dark here. Jones claims Diddy tried to basically groom him into having sex with the other men in the industry.
Even dangled a Grammy Award as a reward. Come on.
He also says he was sexually assaulted by a cousin of Young Miami, the rapper who was dating Diddy at the time.
And it gets even worse. This alleged assault, it happened at Diddy's home, in front of Diddy.
And his staff.
This is another example of that culture of silence, that complicity. And get this, Jones names Diddy's son in the lawsuit too, Justin Dior Combs.
Says he was involved in a shooting at a recording studio.
Then we have Crystal McKinney, model, actress. She says that back in 2003, she was drugged.
And sexually assaulted by Diddy.
At a recording studio, after a Sean John fashion show.
Her story, it really highlights how much power is at play in the music industry.
Especially for young women who are just trying to make it.
Right. McKinney claims that after the assault, Diddy basically blackballed her, destroyed her modeling career.
Then there's April Lampros. She met Diddy in 1994. She was studying fashion.
She claims Diddy sexually assaulted her 4 separate times and repeatedly threatened to hurt her.
Physically and professionally.
He even says that Diddy forced her and his then-girlfriend, Kim Porter, to take ecstasy and have sex while he watched.
before raping her.
But the level of control, the cruelty, it's mind-boggling.
It's a lot, and the stories just keep coming. This past June, Derek Lee Cardello Smith, he's actually in prison right now in Michigan.
He filed a lawsuit alleging that Diddy drugged and sexually assaulted him back in 1997.
The court actually granted him a default judgment at first, but then it was set aside on a technicality. It shows how complicated these legal battles can get.
For sure. And then we have Adria English. Her story takes us to the Hamptons back in 2004. She was a dancer.
Hired with her boyfriend to work at one of Diddy's famous white parties.
Those parties are legendary. But English's story, it's pretty dark.
She claims she was forced to drink alcohol laced with ecstasy and to take other drugs.
And at one of the parties, she was allegedly told to wear this specific outfit. It was basically a signal to the guests that she was a sex-trafficked sex worker.
And then she was forced to have sex with several guests, including Jacob Arabov, better known as Jacob the Jeweler.
Whoa. This accusation, it brings up the whole issue of organized sex trafficking within Diddy's circle.
This isn't just a couple of isolated incidents. This is starting to look like a bigger operation.
Maybe a systemic thing.
And then there's Dawn Richard. She's a singer. Met Diddy when she auditioned for that MTV show Making the Band back in 2004.
According to her lawsuit, she and the other members of her group, Denity Kane, they were subjected to some pretty inhumane working conditions.
They were forced to rehearse for days on end. No food, no breaks. And Diddy would just berate them constantly. Richard even claims she saw Diddy physically assaulting Cassie Ventura.
Multiple times.
That same pattern of abuse and control, over and over again.
Absolutely.
Finally, we have Thalia Graves. Her lawsuit says that Diddy and his bodyguard, Joseph Sherman, raped her back in 2001 and recorded it without her knowing.
And then they distributed the video as pornography.
She said she was too scared to report it at the time.
Yeah.
Because of Diddy's influence, his connections.
It's just a lot to take in. We've heard from 10 people now, 10 accusers, each story more shocking than the last. It's hard not to feel disgusted.
Angry.
Yeah. But we have to remember, these are just accusations. Diddy says he's innocent, and he's entitled to due process like everyone else. But the number of accusations, the consistency of the stories, it paints a very disturbing picture.
It really does. We've listened to every single one of these accounts. And it's tough, but we've come to a conclusion. Based on what we've seen in these lawsuits, we believe Diddy is guilty until proven innocent. These patterns of behavior, you can't ignore them. The drugging, the coercion, the threats, the violence.
It's a seriously disturbing pattern. Welcome back to House of Crimes. We just spent some time talking about the 10 accusers who have come forward with these really heavy accusations against Diddy. And now we got to talk about some of the other names that are tangled up in all of this. Remember, innocent until proven guilty. Always. But the sheer number of people who are being named alongside Diddy, it's concerning. It makes you wonder about a culture of silence, maybe even complicity.
Like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, and with every layer, things get a little more disturbing.
Right. So let's start with Aaron Hall. He's an R&B singer. And in Liza Gardner's lawsuit, she claims that Hall was there back in 1990 when she was raped, alongside Diddy.
And then you have Hart Pierre. He was the president of Bad Boy Entertainment.
He's named in a lawsuit from an anonymous woman. She claims she was trafficked and gang raped when she was just 17 years old by Diddy, Pierre, and another guy.
This lawsuit is just awful.
She says she met Pierre at a lounge in Michigan, and that's where the first assault happened. Then, according to her, Pierre called Diddy.
Diddy convinced her to fly to New Jersey on private jet.
Right. Then she was taken to Diddy's recording studio in New York, given drugs and alcohol, and then gang raped by Diddy, Pierre, and this other guy.
This young woman, she's wanted to be an artist, and then allegedly these guys, they took advantage of her.
And don't forget, this lawsuit also names Daddy's House Recordings and Bad Boy Entertainment. Like, maybe the companies themselves were complicit in some way.
Okay, so that's heavy stuff. But then we have Christina Coram. She was Diddy's chief of staff. Lil Rod Jones names her in his lawsuit, too.
He claims she was involved in getting drugs and sex workers for Diddy and his guests.
And that she even pressured Jones to participate.
Jones also says that Coram helped Diddy sexually assault him and groom him. And get this, Coram's named in another lawsuit, too. This one's from an anonymous woman. And she claims Coram paid for her to travel and, I quote, perform for Diddy multiple times.
So it seems like Coram was really deep in Diddy's inner circle. And if these allegations are true, she might have been a key part of making all this alleged abuse happen.
Now, here's where things get really strange. Cuba Gooding Jr.? Yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr. He's also named in an amendment to Jones's lawsuit.
Jones says Gooding Jr. fondled him, groped him on Diddy's yacht.
I know. It's a really bizarre twist. Gooding Jr. says it's all ridiculous, but it definitely adds another layer of complexity to this whole thing.
And then there are Diddy's sons, Justin Diddy Combs and Christian Combs. Jones says he saw both of them soliciting sex workers and letting underage girls into a party where they allegedly spiked the women's drinks. He even claims he saw Christian Combs drug and assault a woman.
And on top of all that, Christian Combs is facing his own separate lawsuit. This one's from a woman named Grace O'Marquet.
She says Christian Combs assaulted her on Diddy's yacht, with Diddy himself there too.
Both Justin Diddy Combs and Christian Combs say the accusations aren't true. But you have to wonder about the environment they grew up in and what they might have learned from their father.
Okay, next up, Jacob Arabov, a.k.a. Jacob the Jeweler. He's named in Adria English's lawsuit. She's the one who claims she was forced to have sex with guests at one of Diddy's white parties.
Right. She says Arabov was one of those guests.
He hasn't responded publicly.
Yeah.
But his presence at these parties, if it's true, and what allegedly happened there, this isn't good for anyone.
Nope. Then there's Joseph Big Joe Sherman, Diddy's former bodyguard. He's a co-defendant in Thalie Graves' lawsuit.
One where she claims Diddy and Sherman raped her back in 2001.
Right. Sherman says it never happened. He claims he wasn't even working for Diddy in 2001 and that he never even met Graves. But even if that's true, it doesn't really address the bigger question.
Was he complicit in any of Diddy's other alleged behavior back when he was his bodyguard? And last but not least, we have Devontae Swing. He's a member of that R&B group Jodeci. He was added to Liza Gardner's lawsuit later on. She claims Swing, who was an adult, was responsible for her as a minor when he invited her to New Jersey.
Essentially, she's saying he trafficked her across state lines from North Carolina to New York and New Jersey. And the reason? To give her alcohol and marijuana and to prostitute her to Diddy, who was Swing's A&R rep at the time.
And get this, a friend of Gardner's, Monica Case, filed a statement too. Under oath. She says she saw Swing in the room, quote, watching whatever Puffy was doing to Liza.
These are some seriously heavy accusations.
They are. And they suggest a whole network of people might have been involved in enabling Diddy's alleged abuse.
It's not just about one guy, you know? This is starting to look like a systemic problem, maybe a whole system of exploitation and abuse within the music industry.
So we've talked about the accusations against Diddy. We've talked about all the people who might have been involved. But there are a few more names we need to mention. People connected to this story who haven't been named in any lawsuits, but their alleged involvement. Well, it just makes this whole thing even more complicated.
Like we're trying to put together a puzzle,
Yeah.
but the pieces are scattered all over the place. It's like trying to put together this puzzle and we only have half the pieces.
So let's talk about Jimmy Iovine. He co-founded Interscope Records.
Big name in the industry.
And in Dawn Richards' lawsuit, remember her, from Danity Kane, she claims Iovine actually saw Diddy hit Cassie Ventura.
At a party. She even says Iovine saw Diddy punch Ventura in the stomach.
And Richard, she goes on to criticize Iovine and Interscope because they knew, allegedly, about Diddy's violent behavior, but they still kept doing business with him, with Bad Boy Entertainment.
Kept the money flowing.
It makes you think about those record labels, right? How much responsibility do they have to stop this kind of abuse? Do they put profits ahead of the safety of their artists?
Big questions. And speaking of looking the other way, we got to talk about Young Miami. Caresha Brownlee is her real name.
One half of City Girls. She was dating Diddy.
Relatively recently.
At first, she denied knowing anything about these accusations against Diddy. She said, and I quote, "I wasn't around at the time," and that these experiences weren't hers.
But then
Things changed because she ended up being named in a lawsuit.
filed against Diddy by an anonymous woman.
And this lawsuit, it claims that Brownlee actually harassed this woman.
Pressured her to get an abortion after she told Diddy she was pregnant.
And according to the lawsuit, the stress from all this harassment led to the woman having a miscarriage.
It's a serious accusation, and it goes against what Brownlee said before about not knowing anything.
It really does. Okay, now let's bring in someone from outside the music world. Tony Buzbee.
Oh, yeah, he's a big-time lawyer from Texas.
He represented the women who sued Deshaun Watson. He was involved in the Astroworld tragedy.
Now he's part of the Diddy saga, too.
He says his firm is going to file at least 120 separate lawsuits against Diddy.
120, that's a lot.
Busby's calling this the biggest secret in the entertainment industry. He even said the wall of silence has been broken.
Wow. That suggests there are so many more victims out there, people who are finally ready to talk.
It's mind-blowing. This case could get even bigger.
A lot bigger.
And it just shows this isn't just about Diddy. This is about a whole system that might have protected abusers for years and years and silenced the victims.
So we've heard a lot of information today, a lot of accusations.
Well, thanks.
But here are the key takeaways. We have multiple accusers, their stories go back decades, and they all sound eerily similar. The details are graphic.
The patterns of behavior, disturbing.
And the power dynamics, impossible to ignore. Diddy's got a lot of power in the music industry.
And here at House of Crimes, well, we've reached a difficult conclusion. Based on what we've seen in these lawsuits, we believe Diddy is guilty until proven innocent.
Of course, he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. He deserves a fair trial. But these accusations, there are so many, and they're so consistent, you can't just brush them aside.
This whole case, it forces us to face some really uncomfortable truths about the music industry, about the way powerful men might have been getting away with this kind of behavior for a long time.
It's a wake-up call. It's time for some accountability.
We've explored the accusations, we've met the alleged victims, and we've looked at everyone who's around Diddy during all of this.
So what do you think? You've heard the stories.
Do you believe the accusers? Do you think Diddy will finally be held accountable for what he allegedly did?
Let us know in the comments.
And join us again tomorrow. We'll be back, as always, diving deep into the darkest corners of humanity. More shocking stories, more insights into the criminal mind. We'll be here every day, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.
Until then, stay informed, stay vigilant, and as always, keep those lights on.